Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today, we're going to do a deep dive on the idea and concept of intelligent infinity in the Law of One. I'm totally fascinated by this, and what I want to do is create a meditation. I've almost have completely in my mind a meditation on finding intelligent infinity. But I wanted to also do a deep dive on intelligent infinity as it's described in the Law of One. If you get a chance, I have a previous episode that will be linked in this as well, where I discuss and introduce the idea of the Law of One, a channeled work from the 80s, the early 80s, from I believe 1981 to 1984, that explains in spiritual terms an incredible metaphysical scale on the way that the universe works as we move through densities in consciousness, as we move through dimensions, and unveils the process that we are going through on this planet right now, and what we've been through in this life and possibly past lives, and the way the Earth came about. It's really fascinating. I mean, do you ever just look up in the sky and look at all those stars and really wonder what it's really going on? And don't you want to know, and while you're in this incarnation, to know what's really going on? So when you read the book, this is gigantic, 5 books that you can read. There's some edited version that's really good that you can get on Audible. That's the volume 1. And just on a metaphysical scale, this doctoral level metaphysical information that's indicated here. But the really interesting thing that kind of lit me up was a lot of alien civilizations and advanced civilizations in the universe, the key is they reach a point where they can use intelligent infinity on a regular basis. And this transforms the society and everything. They move to a completely different density. It's a game changer for everybody. And so a lot of times the development of a single species is about whether or not they can connect and use intelligent infinity. And the interesting thing about the transcript in Ra, as Ra is being channeled and explaining this, intelligent infinity is available to people on both polarities, on both paths. The negative and the positive path both have access to this intelligent infinity. And in fact, the way it works, 95% of us are on the path to service of others, on the positive path, and about 5% are on the service to self, or the negative path. And even using the word positive and negative is not applied in the book, in the Law of One, as in both polarities are a part of this path. When you read it, it's almost like there's a question that you start to see that the universe was created almost as a question. God had a thought and he had a question, which is predominantly better in the long run. What is the ultimate? Is it service to self? If you have the power of God, is it the service to self, or is it to service to others? And it's like he asked a question, and we're processing, in many ways, a simulation to answer this question. And on a daily basis, we're dealt with negative and positive polarities. And so what happens is, once a species gets contact into this intelligent infinity and the Law of One itself, they completely transform and advance. Everything changes. Imagine a Star Trek type world where everything can be created, where the very physical matter around us is at our whim and our will, and we can control it. We can travel anywhere in the universe. We can do incredible things once you have access to intelligent infinity, according to Ra. So imagine what happens once a species can access knowing of everything. Then the game changes. Then it becomes a sort of game almost. And we are stuck in this game. And this access that we have to co-creating the universe may be different or part of this process. And so what I wanted to do is create a meditation to access intelligent infinity. I've been doing all kinds of research, and if you've listened to my other meditations, I have done some on accessing source and going through the void, which is part of, I believe, going into intelligent infinity. But I wanted to see what Ra had to say about accessing intelligent infinity. So To begin, the questioner asks, I'm reminded of the statement, approximately, if you had enough faith, you could say to a mountain to move, and the mountain would move. I assume this is approximately what you're saying, and I am assuming that if you are fully aware of the law of one, then you're able to do these things. Is that correct? And Ra says, I am Ra. The vibratory distortion of sound, faith, is perhaps one of the stumbling blocks between those of what we may call the infinite path and those the finite proving understanding. You are precisely correct in your understanding of the congruency of faith and intelligent infinity. However, one is a spiritual term, the other more acceptable, perhaps to the conceptual framework, distortions of those who seek with measure and pen. So we have the beginning, the first commentary of the words intelligent infinity in the law of one, and they're saying that it's more than just faith, that this spiritual term has a conceptual framework. Intelligent infinity has a conceptual framework. So later on, a questioner asks about some pyramids, and the only thing that I would say is that they use the pyramid structure as a way of accessing or allowing intelligent infinity as a source to come in. I guess they don't work anymore, but that's what's mentioned. Then there's a question. My question then would be, are there individuals incarnate upon the planet today who would have the necessary inner disciplines to, using your instructions, construct and initiate in a pyramid they built and then possibly do it again? Is this within the limits of what anyone can do on this planet today, or is there no one available for this? Ra says, I am Ra. There are people, as you call them, who are able to take this calling at this nexus. However, we wish to point out once again that the time of the pyramids, as you would call it, is past. It is indeed a timeless structure. However, the streamings from the universe were, at the time we attempted to aid this planet, those which required a certain understanding of purity. This understanding has, as the streamings revolve and all things evolve, changed to a more enlightened view of purity. Thus, we are those among your people at this time whose purity is already one with intelligent infinity. Without the use of structures, healer-patient can gain healing. May we speak further to some specific point. So, in this particular case, we see that the use of intelligent infinity can be accessed without a pyramid or any structures, and you can gain healing through accessing intelligent infinity. In fact, a lot of discussion of healing comes from intelligent infinity. We always talk about things like source, which is discussed with Abraham. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about accessing the void, the quantum void. And so in Quasi's book, he talks about the all-mind, and it's a concept that spreads itself out. It's also discussed in reality transurfing as the space of variations or the alternative space. So we have another spiritual text discussing the space of variations or the alternative space, and it's an actual energy. It's a thing. So imagine if we reach a point in the future where technology intermixes with this alternative space. That's part of what's happening. So the questioner says, I'm assuming then that the selected individual would necessarily be one who was very much in harmony with the law of one. Though he may not have any intellectual understanding of it, he should be living the law of one. Is that correct? I am Ra. This is both correct and incorrect. The first case, that being correctness, would apply to one such as the questioner itself, who has the distortion towards healing, as you call it. The incorrectness, which shall be observed, is the healing of those whose activities in your space-time illusion do not reflect the law of one, but whose ability has found its pathway to intelligent infinity, regardless of the plane of existence from which the distortion is found. So what they're saying is you can access intelligent infinity just on accident in some cases, even with incorrect. It says the incorrectness which shall be observed is the healing of those whose activities in your space-time do not reflect the law of one. So there's healings that can be done outside of the law of one. I'm a little confused, Jim says. I partially understood you. I'm not sure I fully understood you. Would you restate that in another way? Ross says, I can restate that in many ways. Given this instrument's knowledge of your vibratory sound complexes, I will strive for a shorter distortion at this time. 2 kinds there are who can heal. Those, such as yourself, who having the innate distortion towards knowledge, giving of the law of one, can heal but do not. And those who, having the same knowledge but showing no significant distortion consciously towards the law of one, in mind, body, or spirit, yet, and nevertheless, have opened a channel to the same ability. The point being that there are those who, without proper training, shall we say, nevertheless heal. It is a further item of interest that those whose life does not equal their work may find some difficulty in absorbing the energy of intelligent infinity, and thus becoming quite distorted in such a way as to cause disharmony in themselves, and others perhaps even find it necessary to cease the healing activity. Therefore, those of the first type, those who seek to serve and are willing to be trained in thought, word, and action, are those who will be able to comfortably maintain the distortion toward service in the area of healing. So what they're saying is, healing can be done by those in the distortion of service to others. That those without proper training can do it if it's in service to others. It's a further item of interest that those whose life does not equal their work may find some difficulty in absorbing the energy of intelligent infinity. So let's say that one more time. It says, it is a further item of interest that those whose life does not equal their work may find some difficulty in absorbing the energy of the intelligent infinity. So, wow, deeply in that text it says your life, if it does not equal your work, what does that mean? Could that mean that you can better gain intelligent infinity if you've reached your purpose, which you can reach if you align your heart and mind, as we talk about in reality transurfing. So there, it's possible that healing can be done in that way. So there's another question later on. I have no idea of how long it would take, or if you can even tell anything about it. Is it possible for you to give me a synopsis of the program of training required? I have no knowledge of what questions to ask at this point. I'll ask the question in the hopes that it makes sense, Ra says. And as this is important because the questions in this, Ra only answers questions. I think to avoid distortions of free will, Ra's not giving sudden answers to stuff. The questioner can ask any question and then an answer will come out. So a lot of times they don't know what to ask, and so he'll throw ones out like that. Ra's always trying to avoid distorting free will when answering these questions. Ra says, I am Ra. We consider your request for information, for as you noted, there are a significant number of vibratory sound complexes which can be used in sequence to train the healer. So that indicates that there are sounds which can be used in sequence. So there's a sequence of sounds to train the healer. And it says train the healer. So the sequence of sounds just trains the healer. The synopsis is a very appropriate entry that you might understand what is involved. First, the mind must be known to itself. This is perhaps the most demanding part of healing work. If the mind knows itself, then the most important aspect of healing has occurred. So, how does the mind know itself? That's an incredible question. Maybe that's what we're dealing with in all these episodes. For consciousness, and then Ross goes on to say, for consciousness is the microcosm of the law of one. Consciousness is the microcosm of the law of one. When the law of one is used, it's also the same thing as intelligent infinity, but it's accessing the powers that are available in using law of one. As indicated in this text, there are civilizations traveling around the universe instantaneously using intelligent infinity, just accessing it through consciousness, and consciousness is the microcosm of the law of one. So there is a macrocosm of the law of one, which would be group consciousness, which is accessed in higher levels of consciousness, which we are moving towards, like it or not. Very few in service to self, we'll try to avoid that. But eventually all of the densities move toward this group. So the second part has to do with the disciplines of the body complexes in the streamings reaching your planet at this time, Ross says. These understandings and disciplines have to do with the balance between love and wisdom in the use of the body and its natural functions. So the second part has to do with disciplines of the body complexes. So the first was just knowing the mind, and the second and we're talking about accessing and training to be the healer, which means you're accessing intelligent infinity that you can use to heal, which would go beyond healing. But the question was asked for healing, so you can deduct from this that you can access intelligent infinity for other purposes. But the question was asked for healing, and it allowed Roth to answer this question using the guise of healing as a question. So, the most demanding is knowing the mind. The second is the disciplines of the body complexes. So we may need to dedicate another episode to the idea of body complexes. It says, in the streamings reaching your planet at this time, these understandings and disciplines have to do with the balance between love and wisdom in the use of the body and its natural functions. So we're talking about a balance between love and wisdom. Now, love is usually balanced with fear or non-love. So we're talking about polarity between love and wisdom. So is that another way to look at the polarity of service to self and service to love? I'm not sure, but this is an interesting word pairing. When you start to really break down Ra, what is really amazing as I read this, I'm going through the process of realizing the intelligent infinity that's involved in these scripts is the little things that are built into the small sentences. So what is the third part of using the sound vibratory complexes? So remember at the beginning of this answer, Ra is saying there are a significant number of sound vibratory complexes and then gives 3 of them and a synopsis. And these are not sound vibratory complexes, so maybe there are words or there are mantras associated with it. I'm not sure what that means, but there may be more to it. Maybe that's just he's saying sound vibratory complex may also mean the words that are available to that channel. The third area is the spiritual, and in this area, the first 2 disciplines are connected through the attainment of contact with intelligent infinity. So the next question that is asked by the questioner is, my objective is primarily to discover more of the law of one, and it would be very helpful to discover techniques of healing. I'm aware of your problem with respect to free will. You cannot make suggestions, so I will ask if you can state the law of one and the laws of healing to me. I am Ra. The law of one, though beyond the limitations of name, as you call vibratory sound complexes, so vibratory sound complexes are name, may be approximated by stating that all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. All is one. And that one is love, light, light, love, the infinite creator. One of the primal distortions of the law of one is that of healing. Healing occurs when a mind-body-spirit complex, which is the soul, realizes deep within itself the law of one. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent infinity within this mind-body-spirit complex reforms the illusion of body, mind, or spirit to form congruent with the law of one. The healer acts as energizer or catalyst for this completely individual process. One item which may be of interest is that a healer asking to learn must take the distortion understood as responsibility for that ask receiving, thus healing. This is an honor/duty, which must be carefully considered in free will before asking. So, Ra is saying in this that once you learn to heal, that you have a duty. Once you become a healer, that you have a duty to heal and be aware that that your free will is distorted at that point. So, the path towards healing is that there is no distortion, there is no disharmony, there is no imperfection in finding oneness with all the polarities. We gain a greater wisdom, which gives us literal power. So later on, there's another answer. And I'm basically have taken all of the terms intelligent infinity and copied that exact phrase. And what I'm trying to go over here is all of the times that Ra discusses intelligent infinity. So the next question where he discusses it is, the last time we communicated, we were speaking of learning of healing. It is my impression that from what you gave to us in the earlier session, that it is necessary to first purify the self by certain disciplines and exercises. Then in order to heal a patient, it is necessary by example and possibly certain exercises to create a mental configuration in the patient that allows him to heal himself. Am I correct? Ra says, although your learn/understanding distortion is essentially correct, your choice of vibratory sound complex is not entirely as accurate as this language allows. It is not by example that the healer does the working. The working exists in and of itself. The healer is the only catalyst, much as his instrument has the catalysis necessary to provide the channel for our words, yet by example or exercise of any kind can take no thought for this working. The healing working is congruent in that it is a form of channeling some distortion of the intelligent infinity. So there are distortions of intelligent infinity. So they go on to ask, we have decided to accept, if offered, the honor/duty of learning/teaching the healing process. I would ask as to the first step which we should accomplish in becoming effective healers. Now, they've used healing, but clearly we can access intelligent infinity for anything. And so here we get Ra telling us the first of the 3 teachings/learnings of intelligent infinity. So focus closely on what Ra says here. I am Ra, we shall begin with the first of the 3 teachings/learnings. We begin with the mental learned teachings necessary for contact with intelligent infinity. The prerequisite of mental work is the ability to retain silence of self at a steady state when required by the self. The mind must be opened like a door. The key is silence. Now, I'm going to say that again. I think that this is one of the keys on any level. It is the prerequisite of mental work is the ability to retain silence of self at a steady state when required by the self. Retaining silence of self when required by the self at a steady state, meaning that you silence the self for a particular period of time, which is what we're doing with these meditations. We talked about in the Wingmakers episode about the quantum pause, just reaching these points of prolonged silence. A lot of times that's what my meditations are doing, or if you just listen to this beautiful music that you hear in the background on Metaverse, or even if you go into a silent area and just observe the silence, you're going to find the beginning steps of contacting intelligent infinity. Within the door lies a hierarchical instruction you may liken unto geography and in some ways geometry, for the hierarchy is quite regular, bearing interrelationships. To begin, to master the concept of mental discipline, it is necessary to examine the self. The polarity of your dimension must be internalized. Where you find patience within your mind, you must consciously find the corresponding impatience, and vice versa. Each thought that a being has in its turn an antithesis. The disciplines of the mind involve, first of all, identifying both of those things of which you approve and those things of which you disapprove within yourself. And then balancing each and every positive and negative charge with its equal. The mind contains all things. Therefore, you must discover the completeness within yourself. You must discover the opposite of depression, if you're depressed, happiness and joy, sadness, the opposite of every emotion. Go through. And so we'll try to develop this as a part of the meditation, understanding the polarities. And the third discipline of the mind is a repetition of the first, which was in the particular that was examining the self. On the first part of Intelligent Infinity was silencing the self. So the third one is a repetition of the first, but with the gaze towards the fellow entities that it meets. So in each entity there exists completeness. Thus the ability to understand each balance is necessary. When you view patience, you are responsible for mirroring in your mental understanding patience/impatience. When you view impatience, it is necessary for your mental configuration of understanding to be impatience/patience. We use this as a simple example. Most configurations of mind have many facets, and understanding of either self-polarities or what you would call other self-polarities can and must be understood as subtle work. The next step is the acceptance of the other self-polarities, which mirrors the second step. It's almost like shadow work, being aware and accepting of this other side of yourself. These are the first 4 steps of learning mental discipline. The 5th step involves observing the geographical and geometrical relationships and ratios of the mind, the other mind, the mass mind, and the infinite mind. The second area of learn/teaching is the study/understanding of the body complexes. It is necessary to know your body well. This is a matter of using the mind to examine how the feelings, the biases, what would you call the motions, affect the various portions of the body complex. It shall be necessary to both understand the bodily polarities and to accept them, repeating in a chemical/physical manifestation the work you have done upon the mind, bethinking the consciousness. The body is a creature of the mind's creation. It has its biases. The biological bias must be first completely understood, and then the opposite bias allowed to find full expression and understanding. Again, the process of acceptance of the body as a balanced as well as polarized individual may then be accomplished. It is then the task to extend this understanding to the bodies of the other selves whom you will meet, almost as if we're talking about parallel realities and the other selves that exist that you will meet. The simple example of this understanding that each biological male is female, each biological female is male, and I hope to have a God/goddess meditation soon, but embracing that. It's interesting. Almost every case when you attempt the understanding of the body of self or other self, you will again find that the most subtle discernment is necessary in order to fully grasp the polarity complexes involved. At this time, we would suggest closing the description until the next time of work, that they may devote more time. So in another question, they go on, we would like to continue the material from yesterday. So he goes on to say, we proceed now with the third area of teach/learning concerning the development of the energy powers of healing. The third area is the spiritual complex, which embodies the fields of force and consciousness, which are the least distorted of your mind-body-spirit complex. The exploration and balancing of the spirit complex is indeed the longest and most subtle of your learn/teaching. We have considered the mind as a tree. The mind controls the body, and the mind single-pointed, balanced, and aware. The body comfortable in whatever biases and distortions make it appropriately balanced for that instrument. The instrument is then ready to proceed with the great work. That is the work of wind and fire. The spiritual body energy field is a pathway or channel. When body and mind are receptive and open, then the spirit can become a functioning shuttle or communicator from the entity's individual energy of will upwards and from the streamings of the creative fire and wind downwards. So there's a lot to unpack in this one sentence, because we're talking about a reality transurfing concept of the heart and mind being connected is when you can have outer intention, and we are literally seeing that outer intention is intelligent infinity. And so this study of this is also a study of intelligent infinity. Now the idea of wind and fire, and that this receiving the energy is a channel, and also that the spirit becomes a shuttle or communicator from the entity's individual energy of will upwards and the streamings of the creative fire downwards. So the will is going up in that energy stream, and the down is the creative fire. So remember, we have the rising energy that they talk about in transurfing and in yoga, and then the downward energy they talk about in transurfing and Kabbalah and yoga and a number of different disciplines. And activating the plat and the energy fields and the transaction technique all require using these energy fountains that are going up and down. So the healing ability, like all other, as Ross says, what this instrument would call paranormal abilities, is affected by the opening of a pathway or shuttle into intelligent infinity. So we get intelligent infinity finally. And so it's a shuttle into intelligent infinity. The healing ability, like all other, what this instrument would call paranormal abilities. So we're expanding the idea that it goes beyond just healing, is affected by the opening of a pathway or shuttle into intelligent infinity. So what we're trying to do with this meditation is create a pathway or shuttle into intelligent infinity. That's what I'm going to try to do with it. So there are many upon your plane, Ross says, who have a random hole or gateway in their spirit energy field, sometimes created by the ingestion of chemicals, such as what this instrument will call LSD, who are able randomly and without control to tap into energy sources. They may or may not be entities who wish to serve. The purpose of carefully and consciously opening this channel is to serve in a more dependable way, in a more commonplace or usual way, as seen by this distortion complex of the healer, to others who may appear to be miracles. To the one who has carefully opened the door to intelligent infinity, this is ordinary. This is commonplace. This is as it should be. The life experience becomes somewhat transformed, and the great work goes on. At this time, we feel these exercises suffice for your beginning. We will at a future time, when you feel you've accomplished this set before you, begin to guide you into a more precise understanding of the functions and uses of this gateway in the experience of healing, which they talk about later. But there's a lot to unpack with this comment by Ra. So what's happening in the third area is the spiritual complex, which embodies the fields of force and consciousness, which are the least distorted of your mind-body-spirit complex. And the exploration and balancing of the spirit is indeed the longest and most subtle of your learned teachings. So they're using spirit complex, which is a part of the soul. It's the part of you that's the spirit, the spiritual complex, mind-body spiritual complex. So clearly there's a division that they're making of those things, in the eternal nature of the soul, of the mind-body spiritual complex. So the exploration and balancing of the spiritual complex it takes the longest. It's a learning that we go through. And they talk about the mind as a tree. So that means that it has branches and roots throughout the body. So there, again, we want to balance the neurons that are flowing through all of the energy centers. And they're saying that the mind is more than just in the head. And there's perhaps an alignment that comes from understanding these points of alignment. The mind controls the body. With the mind single-pointed, balanced, and aware, the body comfortable in whatever biases and distortions make it appropriately balanced for that instrument. The instrument is then ready to proceed with the great work. That is the work of wind and fire. The spiritual body energy is a pathway or channel. So we know that it's a pathway or channel. And then they talk about that it's more than just paranormal abilities we're talking about. And they talk about LSD, but this very well could be ayahuasca or DMT. We clearly see there can be drugs and chemicals that give us access to intelligent infinity, which I agree 100%. And this access to intelligent infinity is what we're striving for. And it is my purpose and goal to make that available to you just through meditation. Maybe we can do it. And I have a really incredible idea that has come to me. So we'll see how it goes. They go on to ask, how were you able to make the transition from your Venus, and I assume the 6th dimension, which that would be invisible when you reached here? Did you have to change your dimension to walk on Earth? And it says, you will remember the exercise of the wind. The dissolution into nothingness is the dissolution into unity, which is the void meditation that Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, that Sadhguru talks about, that is talked about in reality surfing when they talk about accessing the space of variations. For there is no nothingness. So when you talk about nothingness, there is no nothingness. It's a dissolution into unity. From the 6th dimension, we are capable of manipulating by thought the intelligent infinity present in each particle of light or distorted light, so that we were able to clothe ourselves in a replica visible in the 3rd density of our mind, body, spirit complexes in the 6th density. We were allowed this experiment by the council which guards this planet. So the council of planets, which is discussed in different parts of the Law of One, is a council that exists in the 8th dimension on the ring of Saturn. Don't ask me, that's what he says. And they monitor and allow who is allowed into Earth. And so they have this complete control. And so we begin to talk about the Orion group in discussion of the intelligent infinity. And Orion group is the group that's on the negative path, that may, who knows, but may be behind a lot of what's going on in the world. You never know. So, like it says, like the Confederation, the densities of the mass consciousnesses which comprise that group are varied. When he asks, what is the density of the Orion group? There are very few 3rd density, a larger number of 4th density, a similarly large number of 5th density, and very few 6th density entities comprising this organization. Their numbers are perhaps 1/10 hours at any point in the space-time continuum, as the problem of spiritual entropy causes them to experience constant disintegration of their social memory complexes. So remember, we're talking about Orion, that negative entities, which could very well be demons, the opposite of angels, that work and on the negative polarity on this planet. It's tough for them to survive. The idea of social memory complexes are large groups of people that are thinking in unison, such as Ra. Ra is not just one; it's an entire civilization bundled into one entity, and so their social memory complexes disintegrate. And spiritual entropy means that they never go past the 6th density. And so there is a negative service to self path, but the highest they get is to 6th density, and it's only a few, which is what we're trying to see modeled on the world. Yes, 95% of people go towards a positive self path, but what happens is It doesn't take very many that go on the path of to just the self and not path to service to others. It can be just 5%. What do we have right now? We have 1% that dominate and control all the money, right? So this is a part of the makeup of the universe, that there's these distortions that occur. And so what is happening is we can create a pendulum, a movement, just by accessing intelligent infinity in service to others. Right now, each one of us can become our own star that is creating and broadcasting a vibration that overtakes the service to self and takes us all into an incredible vibration. And this harvest can be incredible, man. So Ra goes on to say, those seeking intelligent infinity through the use of service to self create the same amount of power, but, as we said, have constant difficulty because of the concept of separation, which is implicit in the manifestations of the service to self, which involve power over others. So, we are now learning one of the distortions of service to self is that we use separation, which is implicit in the manifestation of the service to self, which involve power over others. We are avoiding power over others. This weakens and eventually disintegrates the energy collected by such mind-body-spirit complexes, who call the Orion group, and the social memory complexes which comprise the Orion group. It should be noted, however, carefully pondered and accepted, that the law of one is available to any social memory complex which has decided to strive together for any seeking of purpose, be it service to others or service to the self. The laws, which are the primary distortions of the law of one, then are placed into operation, and the illusion of space-time is used as a medium for the development of the results those choices freely made. Thus, all entities learn, no matter what they seek, all learn the same, some rapidly, some slowly. So it's interesting because some people new to the channel that maybe haven't listened to other episodes of the Reality Revolution. I've dedicated a lot of episodes to something called Reality Transurfing, which is a book written by a quantum physicist from Russia called Reality Transurfing. And it discusses a number of different concepts, but one interesting concept that it discusses is the idea of pendulums. The idea that if more than one group of people are thinking thoughts in a similar vibrational frequency about something, for instance, it could be a political party, it could be any number of things, it could be a culture, it could be a family, it could be a state, it could be a group of any kind, that an energy entity is formed. So we constantly have complexes forming, but they may be primal in their nature in just that they take our energies. So becoming aware of this process is a part of the process we are moving towards. And that is a part that Reality Transurfing is playing a part of this process to quicken and hasten our awakenings in many ways. That's just my opinion. For some reason, I believe that the combination of those is why I'm here, for some reason, serving this purpose in the light and love of the law of one and service to others. So Ra goes on, there's a question later. I'm trying to understand how a group such as Orion Group would progress. I was of the opinion that a closer understanding of the law one created the condition of acceptability, moving, say, from our third density to the fourth in our transition now. And I'm trying to understand how it would be possible if you were in the Orion group and pointed towards self-service. How would you progress, say, from the third density to the fourth? What learning would be necessary for that? Ra says, I am Ra. This is the last question of length from this instrument at this time. You will recall that we went into some detail as to how those not oriented towards seeking service for others, yet nevertheless found and could use the gateway to intelligent infinity. This is true at all densities in our octave. We cannot speak for those above us, as you would say, in the next quantum or octave of beingness. This is, however, true of this octave of densities. The beings are harvested because they can see and enjoy the light love of the appropriate density. Those who have found this light love light without benefit of a desire for service, nevertheless, by the law of free will, have the right to use of that light and love for whatever purpose. Also, it may be inserted that there are systems of study which enable the seeker of separation to gain these gateways. This study is as difficult as the ones which we have described to you, but there are those with the perseverance to pursue the study, just as you desire to pursue the difficult path of seeking to know in order to serve. The distortion lies in the fact that those who seek to serve the self are seen by the law of one as precisely the same as those who seek to serve others, for all not one. The serve to others and to serve other is a dual method of saying the same thing. If you can understand the essence of the law of one at this time, then you would understand. So they're starting to talk about Orion, and we can get into some of that other stuff later. And then they go on and talk about Atlantis and Lemuria and how they accessed intelligent infinity, how it messed up their civilizations. And they ask, is there anyone in our history that is commonly known who went to a fourth density self-service or negative type? Or who will go there? And they said the number of entities thus harvested is small. However, a few have penetrated the 8th level, which is only available from the opening of the 7th through the 6th. Penetration into the 8th or intelligent infinity level allows a mind-body-spirit complex to be harvested if it wishes at any time space during the cycle. How did they accomplish this? What was necessary? All of the aforementioned entities were aware through memory of Atlantean understandings having to do with the use of various centers of mind, body, spirit, complex energy influx in attaining the gateway to intelligent infinity. So perhaps they're mentioning some kind of incarnation memory that they would have. So they talk about they talk about wanderers a little bit. It says, imagine, if you will, the sands of your shores, as countless the grains of sand are the sources of intelligent infinity. When a social memory complex has achieved its complete understanding of its desire, it may conclude that its desire is to serve others with the distortion towards reaching their hand, figuratively, to any entities who call for aid. These entities, whom you may call the brothers and sisters of sorrow, move towards this calling of sorrow. These entities are from all reaches of the infinite creation and are bound together by the desire to serve in this distortion. So they're talking about, they asked who are wanderers and where they come from. These entities, whom you may call the brothers and sisters of sorrow, move towards this calling of sorrow. So we get a mention of it, of they are sources of intelligent infinity that move towards distortions of sorrow. They go on to ask, is there a best way for these entities to heal themselves of their physical ailments? And this is the self-healing distortion is affected through realization of the intelligent infinity resting within. This is blocked in some way in those who are not perfectly balanced in bodily complexes. The blockage varies from entity to entity. It requires the conscious awareness of the spiritual nature of reality, if you will, and the corresponding pourings of this reality into the individual mind-body-spirit complex for healing to take place. We will use this instrument as example. The portions of ailment, as you call this distortion complex, that can be perfected in balance are due primarily to a blockage of the indigo ray or pineal energy center. The center receives the intelligent energy from all sources lawful within the one creation that is lawful in this third density distortion or illusion. If there's no blockage, these energies pour or stream down into the mind-body-spirit complex, perfecting the moment by moment the individual's body complex. So we see here Rot saying that the pineal gland, the indigo ray, blocked. So to access intelligent infinity, we need to access and activate our pineal gland. This instrument also experiences some distortion of the green ray energy center, which is, you may call, the heart center. It is overly open due to an intensive desire distortion on the part of this mind-body-spirit complex towards service to others, or as you may call it, universal love. This entity therefore spends itself without regard to its reserves of mind-body-spirit complex distortion in regard to what you call strength or energy. This distortion is primarily due to the blockage of the indigo ray. As we have said before, the misapprehension distortion of the instrument responsible for this blockage is the basic orientation towards a belief in unworthiness. The unworthiness distortion blocks the free flow of intelligent energy. So we know that feeling unworthy blocks intelligent energy. So we need to make sure that we feel worthy. Okay? So we have, your heart can expand too much without relation to the density of the pineal gland. The seventh or violet ray is unimpaired, this being not only an energy receptor but a sum total of the vibratory level of the individual, they keep on saying about this particular channel. The other energy centers are also quite clear. So in this example, Ra is going through the person being channeled and giving an example of how the energy is flowing. And here we see an example of the meridians or chakras or energy centers as described in the Law of One need to be balanced, and doing energy work on a regular basis, flowing your energy up and down and making sure it's balanced and dealing with the congruous emotions and feelings that are associated with these distortions is important. So they go on to say, after this, what happened? Awareness led to the focus of infinity into infinite energy. You have called this by various vibrational sound complexes, the most common to your ears being logos or love. So here the word logos is used, and they're saying that logos is love. The creator is the focusing of infinity as an aware or conscious principle called by us, as closely as we can, create understanding, learning in your language, intelligent infinity. They ask, can you state the next step? The next step, Ross says, is still at this space-time nexus in your illusion, achieving its progression as you may see it in your illusion. The next step is an infinite reaction to the creative principle following the Law of One. In one of its primal distortions, freedom of will, this many dimensions, infinite number, are possible. The energy moves from the infinite, intelligent infinity due to first, the outpouring of randomized creative force, thus then creating patterns in which holographic style appear as the entire creation, no matter which direction or energy is explored. These patterns of energy begin to then regularize their own local, shall we say, rhythms and fields of energy, thus creating dimensions and universes. They go on to ask, then can you tell me how the galaxy and this planet system were formed, this very planet system? Ra says, I am Ra. You must imagine a great leap of thought in this query, for at the last query, the physical, as you call it, universes were not yet born. The energies moved in increasingly intelligent patterns until the individualization of various energies emanating from the creative principle of intelligent infinity became such as to be co-creators. Thus the so-called physical matter began. The concept of light is instrumental in grasping this giant great leap. I added giant in there, so of thought, as this vibrational distortion of infinity is the building block of that which is known as matter. The light being intelligent and full of energy, thus being the first distortion of intelligent infinity, which was called by the creative principle. This light of love, or logos, was made to have in its occurrences of being certain characteristics among the infinite whole paradoxically described by the straight line, as you would call it. This paradox is responsible for the shape of the various physical illusion entities you call solar systems, galaxies, and planets, all revolving and tending towards the lenticular. So they go on to ask, could you tell me how intelligent infinity became, shall we say, I'm having difficulty with some of the language, how intelligent infinity became individualized from itself. I am Ra. This is an appropriate question. The intelligent infinity discerned a concept. This concept was discerned due to freedom of will of awareness. This concept was finity, so the opposite of infinity, finite. This was the first and primal paradox or distortion of the law of one. Thus, the one intelligent infinity invested itself in an exploration of manyness. Due to the infinite possibilities of intelligent infinity, there is no ending to manyness. The exploration thus is free to continue infinitely in an eternal presence. So imagine intelligent infinity discerned the concept of being finite, and in that moment tricked itself into being infinite by using this exploration of manyness. And literally, to me, what I see in there is the creation of the multiverse, of parallel realities, because all of these realities allow for infinity. So the questioner goes on, where was the galaxy that we are in created by the infinite intelligence, or was it created by a portion of the individualized infinite intelligence? So this is a good question I want to ask. Was this galaxy created by just the intelligent infinity, or was there a particularized, individualized portion of intelligent infinity that created our universe? So Ra says, I am Ra. The galaxy and all other things of material of which you are aware are products of individualized portions of intelligent infinity. As each exploration began, it in turn found its focus and became co-creator. So an individualized portion of intelligent infinity is our sun and each of the planets and us. Using intelligent infinity, each portion created a universe and allowing the rhythms of free choice to flow, playing with the infinite spectrum of possibilities. Each individualized portion channeled the love light into what you might call intelligent energy, thus creating the so-called natural laws of any particular universe. Each universe in turn individualized to a focus, becoming in turn co-creator and allowing further diversity, thus creating further intelligent energies, regularizing or causing natural laws to appear in the vibrational patterns of what you would call a solar system. Thus, each solar system has its own, shall we say, local coordinate system of illusory natural laws. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small, of any density or illusory pattern contains, as in a holographic picture, the one creator, which is infinity. Thus all begins and ends in mystery. I'm reminded of a recent interview I had with Jude Currivan, and she has a wonderful book about the holographic nature of the universe. As we see here, Ra is confirming that we are living in a hologram. So the questioner goes on to ask, could you tell me how the individualized portion of intelligent infinity created our galaxy, that the same portion created our planetary system, and if so, how this came about? Ra says, we may have misperceived your query. We were under the distortion impression that we had responded to this particular query. Would you restate the query? So he goes on to say, primary, then, how shall we say, the planetary system that we are now in evolved? Was it all created at once? Or was there first our sun created and then this was all created? I am Ra. The process is from the larger in your allusion to the smaller. Thus, the co-creator, individualizing the galaxy, created energy patterns which then focused in multitudinous focuses of further conscious awareness of intelligent infinity. Thus, the solar system of which you experience inhabitation is of its own patterns, rhythms, and so-called natural laws, which are unique to itself. However, the progression is from the galaxy's spiraling energy to the solar spiraling energy to the planetary spiraling energy to the experiential circumstances of spiraling energy, which begin the first density of awareness or consciousness of planetary entities. The solar system spins, the galaxy spins, the planet spins, and that's why I spin every day when I do. When I wake up and do the 5 Tibetans, because our energy centers are spinning. And as I have found, to begin your work with just a spinning exercise, just spinning, and most of the time it's okay to go right, but if you feel uncomfortable after doing several times, then try going left. Most of the time, 95% of the time, you're going right. And you spin, and there's several other exercises, and I will do an episode soon of my modified version of the 5 Tibetans, but we need to get an idea of the infinite energy that we're bringing in as swirling, and understand that we see it reflected in everything. It's a swirling energy, and so it's confirmed here by Ra. So they go on to say, could you tell me about this first density of planetary entities? Each step recapitulates an intelligent infinity in its discovery of awareness. In a planetary environment, all begins in what you call chaos, energy undirected and random in its infinity. Slowly, in your terms of understanding, there forms a focus of self-awareness. Thus the Logos moves. Light comes to form the darkness. According to the co-creator's patterns and vibratory rhythms, so constructing a certain type of experience. This begins with the first density, which is the density of consciousness, the mineral and water life upon the planet, learning from fire and wind, the awareness of being. This is the first density. The spiraling energy. So he goes on to ask, the first density then progressed to greater awareness, and Ra explains the spiraling energy, which is the characteristic of what you call light, moves in straight line spiral, thus giving spirals an inevitable vector upwards to a more comprehensive beingness with regards to intelligent infinity. Thus, first dimensional beingness strives towards second density lessons of a type of awareness which includes growth rather than dissolution or random change. They go on to ask in a later part of the interview, there was no harvest. What about 25,000 years ago? Was there a harvest then? Here we're beginning to talk about harvests. So to backtrack before I read the answer, there's a recent episode by Bettino Massaro where somebody asked him about the law of one, and he said something interesting. The word harvest is probably being used in this case because the channel used it. The channel was of a Christian variety, which is Carla Rueckert, who was channeling Ra in this time. The idea of the harvest is that we are reaching a point where they harvest, moving people into a higher density. The harvest is not entirely explained. It sounds like it's a positive progress where your soul is graduating, and only a percentage of the planet goes through this harvesting process. Now, interesting, in the Bettino Massaro interview, and I'll try to put a link in this episode, he says that the law of one material is good, but we've gone into a parallel reality from that material. And though it does reflect what was going on in the 80s, it may not be as accurate as to what's happening today. But so maybe the Mandela effect is part of that. There was a single major large parallel reality shift that occurred that people are becoming aware of through the Mandela effect. It's possible. It's interesting. When I interviewed Cynthia Sue Larson, she talked about having traveled back through time because quantum computers and AIs had begun to control the universe and consciousness. And in traveling back, she had stopped it, very much like the Terminator. So going back, the next mention of infinite intelligence or intelligent infinity, which is different here, was where did the information come from that Edgar Cayce channeled? Edgar Cayce is a popular channel that claimed to be channeling the Akashic records, and he has many incredible channeled information of healings that were genuinely worked. So Ra answers, I am Ra. We have explained before that the intelligent infinity is brought into intelligent energy from the 8th density or the octave. So we have to remember that. We have another principle that has been hinted at by Ra, because Ra is only answering questions, and we don't know what questions to ask. How do we access this intelligent infinity without distorting our free will? So we can get it from the 8th density or octave, the one vibratory sound complex called Edgar. So that they're just referring to Edgar, used this gateway to view the present, which is not the continuum you experience, but the potential social memory complex of this planetary sphere. The term your peoples have used for this is the Akashic record, or the Hall of Records, which, to me, is the same thing as intelligent infinity, but we're talking about the intelligent portion of infinity. Akashic record is a record of infinity, so maybe that's the difference. Maybe it's the Holy Ghost. So they ask later, in a later part of the interview, when intelligent infinity is mentioned again, how does an individual go about balancing himself? So we talked about balancing before, and so they finally ask about balancing the energy centers, and this is what Ra says. Ra says the steps are only one, that is understanding of energy centers which make up the mind-body-spirit complex. This understanding may be briefly summarized as follows. The first balancing is of the Malkuth, or Earth, vibratory energy complex, called the red ray complex. An understanding and acceptance of this energy is fundamental. The next energy complex, which may be blocked, is the emotional or personal complex, also known as the orange ray complex. This blockage will often demonstrate itself as personal eccentricities or distortions with regard to self-conscious understandings or acceptance of self. The third blockage, resembles most closely that which you have called ego. It is the yellow ray, or the solar plexus center. Blockages in this center will often manifest as distortions towards power, manipulation, and other such behaviors concerning those close and those associated with the mind-body-spirit complex. Those with blockages in these first 3 energy centers, or nexi, so we see a reference of the nexi, will have continuing difficulties in ability to further seeking their law of one. So we need to balance these first 3. So moving on, it goes on to say, the center of heart, or green ray, is the center from which 3rd density beings may springboard, shall we say, towards infinite intelligence. So check out the heart-mind coherence meditation that I have on this channel. It's 11 minutes. It's based on science, on a way to coordinate the heart and mind. There's also a longer heart-mind meditation, and I have another video on how coordinating the heart and mind is powerful. And again, we're seeing it referenced everywhere. So the next center is the pineal, or the indigo ray center. Those blocked in the center may experience a lessening of the influx of intelligent energy due to manifestations which appear as unworthiness. This is that of which you spoke. As you can see, this but one distortion is due to the several points of energy influx in the mind-body-spirit complex. The indigo ray balancing is quite central to the type of work which revolves about the spirit complex, which has the influx then into the transformation or transmutation of 3rd density to 4th density, it being the energy center receiving the least distorted outpourings of love light from intelligent energy, and having also the potential for the key to the gateway of intelligent infinity. The remaining center of energy influx is simply the total expression of the entity's vibratory complex of mind, body, and spirit. It is as it will be balanced or imbalanced, has no meaning at this energy level, for it gives and takes in its own balance. Whatever the distortion may be, it cannot be manipulated, as can the others, and therefore has no particular importance in viewing the balancing of an entity. Now they say the energy is the remaining centered energy influx is the total expression. So you're saying that, they go on to ask, so you're saying that we ourselves then create these? I Am Ross says, entities consciously do not create these. The roots of mind complex having touched in understanding, intelligent infinity create them. So they go on to ask, is it possible to help an entity reach a fourth density level in these last days? So when I read this is important, this is the dedication of this podcast, to take you to the next density. That's the reality revolution that we're going through. So Ra tells me, it is impossible to help another being directly. It is only possible to make catalyst available in whatever form, the most important being the radiation of realization of oneness with the Creator from the Self, less important being information such as we share with you. We ourselves do not feel an urgency for this information to be widely disseminated. It is enough that we have made it available to 3, 4, or 5. This is an extremely ample reward for if one of those obtains fourth density understanding due to this catalyst, then we shall have fulfilled the law of one in the distortion of service. So just helping one person move to a higher density is enough. We encourage a dispassionate attempt to share information without concern for numbers or quick growth among others. The attempt to make this information available is in your term, your service. The attempt, if it reaches one, reaches all. So in attempting to give you this information, I'm in service. If you have information to share, you should be of service too, and it may give you a justification or reason to start that podcast, to start that channel, to write that book, to create that piece of art, to share your intelligent infinity. They say we cannot offer shortcuts to enlightenment. Enlightenment is of the moment, is an opening to intelligent infinity. It can only be accomplished by the self and for the self. Another self cannot teach/learn enlightenment, but only teach/learn information, inspiration, or a sharing of love, of mystery, of the unknown that makes the other self reach out and begins the seeking process that ends in a moment. But who can know when an entity will open the gate to the present? And so I offer all my meditations and my podcasts to you in hopes that it inspires you to share love, that the mystery of it, of the unknown, inspires you, and that you connect to intelligent infinity. And we are doing it, and we're learning how to do it. So there's some discussion later about the gate with Jesus and the Orion group that and Taras Bulba and Genghis Khan, who were in service to self, and I won't go through those. I just wanted to see if there was anything else when talking about intelligent infinity. There is a number of different references throughout the law of one that keep on going. So they ask, would you define the word intelligent in the concept of intelligent infinity? And this is important. We shall address the entire spectrum, Ross says, of this question before defining as requested. Your language, using vibrational sound complexes or words, can be best at an approximation of that which is closer to an understanding, if you will, of the nature of conscious thought. Perceptions are not the same as sound vibration complexes, and the attempt to define will therefore be a frustrating one for you, although we are happy to aid you within the limits of your sound vibration complexes. To define intelligent apart from infinity is difficult, for these two vibration complexes equal one concept. It is much like attempting to divide your sound vibration concept faith into two parts. We shall attempt to aid you, however, and this is where we get to the key of it. It is not necessary to divide it. The definition of intelligent infinity as one part is sufficient, he asks. Could you please now define intelligent infinity? You can hear in that question the desperation, because Ra can only answer what he can say. So Ra then says, this is exponentially simpler and less confusing. There is unity. This unity is all that there is. This unity has a potential and kinetic. The potential is intelligent infinity. Tapping this potential will yield work. This work has been called by us intelligent energy. The nature of this work is dependent upon the particular distortion of free will, which in turn is the nature of a particular intelligent energy or kinetic focus of the potential of unity, or that which is all. So they go on to ask, I'd like to expand a little on the concept of work. In Newtonian physics, the concept of work is what we call a force which moves through space. It's the product of force and distance as we measure it. I'm assuming that the work of which you speak is a much broader term, including possibly work in consciousness. Am I correct? I am Ra, Ross says, as always, and continues to say, as we use this term, it is universal in application. Intelligent infinity has a rhythm or flow as of a giant heart, beginning with the central sun, as you would think or conceive of this. The presence of the flow, inevitable as a tide of beingness, without polarity, without finity or finity. The vast and silent, all beating outward, focusing outward and inward until the focuses are complete. The intelligence or consciousness of foci have reached a state where there is, shall we say, spiritual nature or mass calls them inward, until all is coalesced. This is the rhythm of reality as you spoke. That is amazing. This may be one of the deepest and most poetic parts, where Ra goes into a little tangent here, saying inward, inward, inward 3 times and outward, outward twice. All beating outward, outward, focusing outward and inward. So he says outward 3 times as well. And he's talking about inevitable tides, a tide of beingness without polarity, without being finite. The vast, silent, all beating outward, focusing outward and inward until the focuses are complete. That's beautiful. So they ask, now I think I have extracted an important point from this, is that in intelligent infinity we have work without polarity, or a potential difference does not have to exist. Is this correct? I am Ra. Ra says there is no difference, potential or kinetic, in unity. The basic rhythms of intelligent infinity are totally without distortion of any kind. The rhythms are clothed in mystery, for they are being itself. From this undistorted unity, however, appears a potential in relation to intelligent energy. In this way, you may observe the term to be somewhat two-sided. One used of the term that being as the undistorted unity, being without any kinetic or potential side. The other application of this term, which we use undifferentiatedly for lack of other term, in the sense of the vast potential tapped into by foci or focuses of energy, we call intelligent energy. So they ask, now I understand that the first distortion of intelligent infinity is the distortion of what we call free will. Can you please give me a definition of this distortion? I am Ra. In this distortion of the law of one, it is recognized that the Creator will know itself. They go on to ask that this is then being the first distortion of the law of one, which I'm assuming the law of intelligent infinity, from all other correction, all other distortions which are the total experience of creation spring from this is this. correct. I am Ra. This is both correct and incorrect. In your illusion, all experience springs from the law of free will, or the way of confusion. In another sense, which we are learning, the experiences are this distortion. They go on to say, I would like for you to define love in this sense, in its sense as the second distortion. This must be defined against the background of intelligent infinity, Ross says, or unity, or the one creator, with the primal distortion of free will. The term love then may be seen as the focus, the choice of attack, the type of energy of an extremely, shall we say, high order, which causes intelligent energy to be formed from the potential of intelligent infinity in just such and such a way. This then may be seen to be an object rather than an activity by some of your peoples, and the principle of this extremely strong energy focus being worshipped as the creator instead of unity or oneness from which all love emanate. Is love, they ask, is there a manifestation of love that we could call vibration? And I am Ra always states. Again, we reach semantic difficulties. The vibration or density of love or understanding is not a term used in the same sense as the second distortion. Love, the distortion love being the great activator and primal co-creator of various creations using intelligent infinity. So we know that love is part of intelligent infinity. The vibration love being that density in which those who have learned to do an activity called loving without significant distortion then seek the ways of light or wisdom. Thus, in vibratory sense, love comes into light in the sense of the activity of unity in its free will. Love uses light and has the power to direct light in its distortions. Thus, vibratory complexes recapitulate in reverse the creation in its unity, thus showing the rhythm or flow of the great heartbeat, if you will use this analogy. These discussions of intelligent infinity are just truly amazing. There's clearly something here, and hopefully by me reading this, I've been able to pull some part of it out of for you. One place where they say this concept is incorrect, as in they ask a question. I may be backtracking a little bit and make a few false starts today, because I think we are possibly the most important part we are doing, and trying to make it apparent through questioning how everything is one, how it comes from one intelligent infinity. This is difficult for me to do, so please bear with me my errors in questioning. The concept that I have right now of the process, using both what you have told me and some of Dewey Larson's material having to do with physics of the process, I have the concept that intelligent infinity expands outward from all locations everywhere. It expands outward in every direction uniformly, like the surface of a balloon or a bubble expanding outward from every point everywhere. It expands outward at what's called until velocity, or the velocity of light. So Ra says this concept is incorrect, as it is any concept of the one intelligent infinity. This concept is correct in the context of one particular logos, or love, or focus of this creator, which has chosen its, shall we say, natural laws and ways of expressing them mathematically and otherwise. The one undifferentiated intelligent infinity, unpolarized, full and whole, is the macrocosm of the mystery-clad being. We are messengers of the law of one, unity. At this approximation of understanding cannot be specified by any physics, but only be activated or potentiated intelligent infinity due to the catalyst of free will. This may be difficult to accept. However, the understandings we have to share begin and end in mystery. So they're saying that we are when it spreads outward, it's the light. So the sun is a logos. So that is spreading outward, and that's how intelligent infinity. So the sun is just direct intelligent infinity. So we've just learned a lot from this so far, and I could just keep on going because there's many more references, and I may do a whole other episode to talk about this concept. But for now, we will go from there. There's one other part where they talk about using the energy centers as functioning in a way to communicate with intelligent infinity. And that's why the energy centers are important. And they also say, at another part, in relationship to intelligent infinity, the sun body is equally with all parts of the infinite creation part of the infinity. So, in relation to potentiated intelligent infinity, which makes us use of intelligent infinity, it is the offspring, shall we say, of the logos for a much larger number of sub-logi. The relationship is hierarchical in that sub-logos use the intelligent energy in ways set forth by the logos and uses its free will to co-create the, shall we say, full nuances of your densities as you experience them. In relation to the density, the sun body may physically, as you say, be seen be a large body of gaseous elements undergoing the process of fusion and radiating heat and light. Metaphysically, the sun achieves a meaning to 4th through 7th density according to the growing abilities of entities in these densities to grasp the living creation and co-entity or other self-nature of the sun body. Thus, by the 6th density, the sun may be visited and inhabited by those dwelling in time, space, and may even be partially created from moment to moment by the processes of 6th density entities in their evolution. This is all talking about the sun. And the sun is this co-creator and this powerful engine of intelligent energy. So we've talked about some incredible things. We talked about opening the mind and quieting the self to intelligent energy, balancing the energy centers, and some just interesting examples of how intelligent energy was used to create our planet and our Earth and so many other interesting things. So we know that we need to reach infinite. We need to reach the infinite. We need to balance our centers. We're going to try to do that with this next meditation. But I hope this gives you a concept, a basic beginning understanding of intelligent infinity as it's discussed by the Law of One. There's a lot of cool stuff that's unimportant in the Law of One that we will discuss later on, like the history of the universe, history of our solar system, how planets that used to exist in this solar system have been destroyed, and how other species may have existed on other planets. There's so many interesting things that are not important, but the really interesting part to me is an element of evolution for a single species is the way we access intelligent infinity. And I believe it's my purpose to help you to access intelligent infinity every day and every way. You are getting more and more tuned in to intelligent infinity. Be a part of this tide, this wave of fortune that is rising up in service as you expand your energy centers and balance them out. We are moving into contact with pure intelligent infinity. All we have to do is accept it and let it in. And take this as an obligation to heal and help others and spread knowledge, and take it and activate and raise the vibrations of those around you. Do this actively on a regular basis. When you're just sitting in your house, say, just activate the people around you. Say that I know why you're here. I know why you serve. You are free. You are free. You are free. And free the beings around you. Take responsibility for the great power that you have inside. As you are a created and a creator. A creator. You are the infinite. The Law of One. Just as Neville Goddard says, you are God. Deep down. And it is our role in this time. It is our place. We have been on this journey for millions of years, through millions of solar systems. And the time has finally come for our souls, for our mind-body-spirit complexes, to connect to intelligent infinity and use this for the better good of the universe in all polarities at this time, whatever polarity you're glowing at. As you listen to this, your density is rising, your vibration is going up, and welcome to this intelligent infinity, and welcome to the reality revolution.